everyone, welcome back to another character sprite time lapse. This one is a little bit different. I wanted to design a sprite for a game, just a fictional game. The idea was that it was a reporter. I wanted a fall theme since it's still fall, so I'm trying to figure out an idea of some sort of reporter with maybe a camera, some sort of adventurer, explorer. Maybe she can have some sort of bag at her side, some camera to hold. I'm trying to create if it were for a game, she was the main character and she was running around and doing all those things, what would she look like? After I kind of figure out the size that I want, I go into her eyes, and this was fun. I want her to be wide-eyed and opened. So here I'm trying out a lot of different shapes and sizes for her eyes. I kind of get a general idea of how I want her eyes and her face to look. So I'm just looking at references, trying to figure it out. Messing with the mouth, messing with the head size and shape. It's a thing to keep in mind that the taller the head is, the more mature. Shorter it is, the cuter it is. It kind of folds into that chibi. You can kind of see when the eyes are higher above the face, more mature, lower, cuter. And here I'm kind of messing around with trying to figure out, okay, should I add blush? Should I add the eyes? How big should I make the eyes? How small should I make the eyes? I'm looking up skin tones as it's easier than trying to mess around in Ivy skin tones. So here I'm just going in and trying to figure out the pupil size and the eye shape. I want big round eyes to show her optimism and her bubbliness, and I'm trying to make sure it looks like she's focusing. I also want to add eyelashes on her as well, so I'm trying to see if I can add that to the overall shape of the face. So here I'm just kind of going over different iterations. You can kind of see, I try to see, all right, can I change the pupil size, or is this the size? And then this pupil is 3x3, so here I try 1x3, and I try different angles and different sizes. But once I get the overall head done, I move on to the rest of the body. You can kind of see, didn't work out with making it so small. So I'm just trying and seeing the minimum size I can do things. I thought about giving her some sort of stockings, but that didn't work out. So I changed the height. So here I kind of make her taller so that her body can fill out more space, and then I can give her body more area to breathe. And we're going to be able to bob. I'm not sure if I'll go in later and add some animation. Later is in another video. But here I just wanted to make a simple, just single sprite, and then kind of maybe go on and add more animations and things of that nature. Here I think about adding maybe a tucked sweater, as this is supposed to be fall themed. So I'm giving her a big red sweater to keep her warm, and maybe some skirt to kind of run around with. I'm looking at references for reporters and looking at more fall themed weather. I'm thinking about, okay, maybe a skirt, how would her feet be positioned? Are these stockings? Are they not stockings? Going over and just trying different ideas. Since I didn't like the way the hands are positioned, and I wanted the hands to be more at the side instead of T-posing, I go back and I'm just trying to blob in what it feels like. I'm trying different outfits, different ideas, and different feels. Here I think, okay, maybe she's wearing a red dress with the big coat overhead. Didn't like it, so I changed it again, and I'm going in here, messing with colors and seeing what works, or rather, seeing what I like, seeing what I don't like. I'm keeping in mind just the thing of, well, if I don't like it, I can always go back. So it's a matter of trial and error and testing. I'm just swapping the colors back to what they were, and then I decide on, right, I'm gonna do a kind of, I forget what it's called, but where you have the shirt underneath, and then the skirt over top, and the clips above it. I forget it at the moment. Once I figure out the general feel of her clothing, I then move on to her head, and here I kind of go in and reference the sketch I made earlier, and after I figure out, okay, here like this, then I think about maybe adding some sort of beret, and because I'm trying to make this into a character sprite, I realized, all right, she can't have long hair. It would kind of mesh into her clothing, and I wanted a really strong silhouette for the character. So instead I keep short, kind of swirly, a little bit messy to show she's a little all over the place. She's neat and tidy, but she's explorative and she's going everywhere. I'm thinking about adding maybe hair clips in the back, but I do hair clips so often that I changed my mind, and no hair clips, it's just messy hair. I'm trying to figure out, as one of the issues right now I'm having is I'm struggling to draw hats, so I wanted to put a hat on her to give myself an excuse to get better and just try adding additional pieces to clothing. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, how would a beret look? I'm looking at references and trying to figure out, okay, maybe I can use a blob method and shading and blobbing everything out. I know when I'm looking at the hats and the heads, I need the hair to look like it's coming from underneath the hat. So it's just a matter of seeing and messing around with shapes and sizes and colors and seeing, okay, So the top is shaded, the bottom's not shaded. I'll have a reference to some berets I'm looking at so you can see what I mean. It's tricky. I always seem to choose the trickiest of headwear, clothing wear. If it's not a cowboy hat, it's a beret, and the berets are kind of a little wonky looking. But I like how it came out in the end. So I'm just trying to figure out my shading and my lighting. What part of the beret is pointing towards the sky? What part of the beret is pointing down towards the sky? I see some that kind of start at the forehead. So here I'm lowering it down so it fits more nice and tucked against her head. I'm making it shorter and making it rounder, trying to overall get a feel for it. And then I add the lighter color. I add a lighter color around the trim to kind of show the separation. I go back in and try to see if I can mess around with the eyes again, as I'm trial and error. That's all it really comes down to. It's a matter of, all right, this seems to be the 3x3, seems to be the best eye shape for this character. So I keep it, and I keep going. I kind of reorder and restructure my overall format in the file. And after that, I move on to adding colors and shading with the character. I realize the head kind of looks a little funny, so I add a taller neck. It kind of made it look a little bit too short, so I'm just messing around, moving things. I'm checking my values. I think maybe I can add a kind of floofy part on the front of her head to fill in that space, but I realize I don't like the way it looks. I think it's better without that floof part. It kind of adds that focus on her head a little bit more. So I remove it and I go back to just trying to shade her hair. And this is a new method I was using. I'm trying to shade it in the light instead of shading in the darkness. So I'm adding highlights where I think the light will be hitting and going over and trying to make sure the hair pops out against both the face and the clothing. You can kind of see it in black and white with the values. After that, I move on to trying to add the shading to the clothing. You can kind of see I'm messing around with trying to figure out if the hands are forward, backwards, and I want the hands to be at the side. So I'm just trying different ways the sleeves could work, maybe possibly. I'm trying to figure out the overall shading in the clothing, and here I think I did the clothing a little bit too shaded. So I kind of go back and simplify the shading. I want it to be kind of a oversized sweater. So I'm just adding a little bit of shading to get the point across, but not too much. I think about adding shine. I don't think I keep the shine, but I'm adding shine, I'm adding shading, so 2 colors. I've learned it seems to be 2 to 3 colors for clothing, depending on the clothing itself. I'm messing around with the skirt, going again with that 2 clothing. I realize the hands are together, 2 wards together too much, so I separate it a little bit, and then I'm going in with the skirt. Now, this was tricky and difficult. It's tricky and difficult. It's the name of the game here, to challenge myself. After I realize I don't like the way the camera looks at her side, I go back and I edit the skirt so that instead of a skirt, I give her pants. I'm realizing I don't really know how to draw a camera tilted and at the edge, so instead I move on to reworking it. So instead it's a bag, as I want her to be a reporter, an exploring reporter. So she doesn't have just a camera. She needs to have a bag you can see on her character that she can pull stuff out of, and overall have a like she's got a backpack, but I didn't want to give her a backpack. I wanted to give her a bag. So after I realize I don't want to have the skirt, I move on to extending it, adding it, trying to figure out, okay, if I don't do a skirt, or short skirt at least, maybe I can do a longer skirt, or maybe I can make pants. So I end up adding pants once I realize the shading's a little bit misaligned. And after I do that, I'm kind of just going over, trying different shapes, trying different sizes, seeing what works, or at least what seems to work. I'm trying shading and trying to see overall what feels right. The skirt didn't feel right, so I ended up going back and fixing it and swapping everything over. The thing about this small size of pixel art is that you kind of have to, it's a give and take. I can't do too much detail, and since I couldn't do too much detail, I give an attempt at seeing, okay, what ways can I portray this bottom part? Can it be shorts? Can it be a skirt? Can it be a long skirt? Does it need to be a wide skirt? Does it need to be a narrow skirt? I'm trying to make sure her clothing pops out against each other. I don't want it to blend. I want there to be a clear separation between the two. And since it seems like I don't have the current skill to be able to draw the skirt lines, I think, okay, pockets? No pockets, okay. So I need the sweater, I need the skirt, and I need the bag to pop out against each other. Those 3 things need to be separated when you're looking at it with black and white. But after realizing skirt didn't work, I give her some big pants, which I think is a little bit cuter. I think it's more of a newsy sort of feel. Is it newsy? I feel like that's the musical I've seen, or heard of at least, in the, maybe. But I'm going in, changing your shoes, trying to figure out, okay, thinking 3D, looking at boots. As again, this is a explorer kind of in the woods, going around, getting questions, taking answers, taking names. She might climb a few ladders, hike on a few mountain trails. So I wanted her clothing to feel active. I thought skirt was okay, but I feel like pants kind of suit her better and just running around. I'm trying to add shading here to show the knees, where the parts of the pants are. I add a little bit of a floof at the end of the pants. I think it adds definitely more definition than just straight pants. I add a belt buckle in the center to add, again, just more difference. And I want to make sure her bag doesn't overlap the belt. I want everything to seem different and separate. So I'm trying to keep those values in line. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what color can I do so that this bag pops out both against the red shirt and these pants? And it's just a matter of going in and changing values, checking values. I do a little trick of checking black and white, and I'm going in and I realize, okay, seems to be better if either the bag is very bright or very dark. So after trying very bright, as I put her skin tone against the bag, as if I do animations, I want her hands to also contrast well against the bag. So I end up making the bag very dark so that her hands and everything else on her body will contrast against it. And it also makes it nice in the sense that it pops. So everything else is bright, this part is very dark. After I get the general feel of the sprite done, I move on to an outline. I kind of forgot the outline, but I go back and add the outline. The outline's kind of my favorite part. I outlined the pants already, the pants and shoes, but I realized I didn't do it with the clothing and her hands. So after I do a general outline, I then move on to shading the outline. I start off with just colors and adding that bit. So I'm adding dark brown for the hair for a dark brown outline. I'm adding red for the red outline, and just going around and trying to see what parts work. I'm messing around with the hands, and right now it's a less saturated tone, and I up the saturation. One thing I realized about art that I like is I really like high saturated tones. So I'm sticking here and going in afterwards and adding more saturation to see what works, see what doesn't work. I go back in, and it does seem like it does seem like I do add in the highlights for the clothing, and it's subtle, but I think it helps. After that, I add since I can't figure out what good highlight color to add, I'm going in and adding in a multiply layer or just some sort of filter over where I want the parts of her body to be highlighted at. And this kind of helps in the sense that I don't have to technically worry about the specific color. I just have to worry about shading. What part of the body do I want to be highlighted? Doesn't matter the color specifically, I just want it to pop. And you can see here as well, I'm trying to think about maybe adding a little bit more detail along the hat, and I kind of do along the trim to make it shiny and cool looking. At least I think so. And after that, I kind of go in and I'm just modifying things. I'm seeing, okay, what can I change about her face? I end up removing the blush, making her eyes taller, and I think it definitely helps in making her look bright-eyed and excited. And after that, I move on to just overall saying, okay, do the eyes need to change? Do the lashes need to change? If I move the lashes up and down, how does that look against each other? Can the eyes move up? The pupils? I'm kind of measuring and trying to track everything, but this is the final part. I'm kind of just going back and saying, okay, anything else? And no. So that's it. That is my reporter explorer gal here. Is it here? Or is it here? And that is that. And while I was editing and making the cover, I was messing around with some layers, some settings as well. And I can't tell. Do you like the more saturated one, which I didn't do? It was a filter that I was able to add afterwards. Or do you like the original less saturated version that was what I had initially? I kind of like the saturated one, but I also feel like this less saturated one is more down to tone. But tell me what you think, and let me know what other characters and ideas or themes you'd like to see in the comments below. It is November, so I want to do a fall theme, and then once we get to December, we can do some more Christmassy themes. I think that'd be fun, since this series is once a week on Mondays. But with that, thank you to Colonel for being a Patreon member of mine. On there, I have the raw files of previous pixel art I've done. And with that, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. I'll see you next week, and see you soon. Bye-bye.